Welcome to Hidden Ties, where every story hides a deeper truth. I show up to the family vacation spot, bags in hand, ready for a fun, relaxing time. But then I find out they didn't book me a room. And what I did next, well, it's something they'll never forget. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. I'm Joan, 52, and I live in a cozy, cluttered apartment in the city. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which means my schedule's flexible but also unpredictable. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in work. Other times I feel like I'm just floating through life, waiting for the next project to land on my desk. It wasn't always like this. I used to be in a stable office job with a nice paycheck and all the perks that came with it. But when the company I worked for shut down, I was left scrambling for a new career, figuring out what I really wanted to do. It took me years to find a rhythm, but now that I've got it, I've learned to appreciate the quiet, the flexibility, and the freedom. Still, the stability I once had is something I miss from time to time. Family vacations were something I dreaded. My siblings, Lara, Dave, and Amy, loved these trips, but I always felt like the outsider. There was an unspoken distance between us, an awkwardness that only grew over the years. They're all happily married, with kids, and when they go on trips, it's like they've got this perfect, tightly knit group, and I'm the single aunt, floating around the edges. This year, they decided on a week-long trip to a resort upstate. I wasn't exactly thrilled when I got the email invite. "Hey Joan, we're going to the Pines Resort. It'll be fun. Come join us," it read. But I had a feeling they were only inviting me out of obligation. "Of course I'll go," I wrote back. I didn't want to be the one to say no, to ruin the family harmony, even though I knew deep down that this was going to be awkward. I tried to get excited about it. I packed my favorite beachwear, some light reading for the lazy days, and even a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, this time it would be different. But when I got to the resort, the air was thick with tension. I could already feel it. My siblings were all chatting away like old pals, their kids running around, laughing and playing, and I was standing there at the check-in desk, waiting for them to tell me where my room was. Joan, you didn't get a room," the receptionist said with a tight smile. "There's been some sort of mix-up?" I blinked, sure that I hadn't heard her correctly. "What do you mean, no room?" The receptionist shifted uncomfortably. "It seems your reservation didn't come through. It's all booked up now, I'm afraid." I stood there, holding my bags in the middle of the lobby, feeling the eyes of my family on me. They hadn't booked me a room. No one had bothered to double-check the details. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just an oversight. It was intentional. Lara, my older sister, was the first to notice the tension. She came over, flashing that forced smile of hers. "Oh, Joan, we didn't think it was necessary to book you a room since you could always stay with one of us." "Really?" I said, my voice tight with disbelief. "You thought I'd just sleep on the couch? Or in one of your kids' rooms?" "Well, it's not like we planned on you being alone," she said, brushing her hair back as if that would make this better. "You could share a room with Amy, maybe." Amy's room was already full. I could see it in her eyes, the awkwardness, the discomfort, the fact that this was the last thing she wanted. And as for Dave? He looked at me for a second, then quickly turned back to his wife, ignoring the situation altogether. I had to laugh, but it was that bitter, dry laugh that you let slip when everything's completely messed up. "Right. I'll just find a nice bench somewhere." I wanted to scream, to throw a fit, to make them see how thoughtless they were. But instead, I stood there in silence, fighting the embarrassment that was spreading through my chest. It wasn't the first time they'd overlooked me, but it stung more than I expected. The vacation had barely started, and already I was feeling like the odd one out, again. But that's when a thought sparked in my mind, like a little ember in the dark. Maybe it was time for a change. Maybe it was time to show them how serious I was about not being treated like an afterthought. I spent the first hour after the reception desk debacle standing in the lobby, staring at my phone. I didn't want to call anyone, didn't want to give them the satisfaction of hearing how upset I was. But inside, my thoughts were racing. I couldn't believe they'd done this to me. For years, they'd acted like I didn't quite fit into their perfect little family, and this was just the final straw. The idea of letting them off the hook, of quietly accepting this, made me feel sick. I could feel that old, passive Joan, the one who just sat back and let everyone walk all over her, waking up. But there was another part of me, a part that had been silent for far too long, that told me, no more. I walked outside, feeling the cool breeze wash over me, and stood at the edge of the resort's patio, looking at the sparkling lake beyond. This wasn't just about not having a room, it was about respect, or, more accurately, the lack of it. The first call I made was to the front desk. "I need to speak with the manager," I said, trying to sound calm, though my teeth were clenched. A few minutes later, a man in his mid-30s with a crisp uniform appeared, and I didn't waste any time. "I'm Joan," I said, walking up to him with purpose. "You need to find me a room. There's been a mistake with my booking, and I expect it to be corrected." He looked confused at first, checking his tablet screen and fidgeting with his pen. "We're fully booked, ma'am. There's nothing we can—" "I don't want to hear that," I interrupted, raising my voice just enough to make him pause. "You figure it out. I didn't drive all the way here to be treated like this. There has to be something you can do." The manager looked like he was ready to give me the runaround, but I wasn't going to let him. I could feel the old me, the one that always gave in, pushing back harder and harder. "If you can't find me a room, I'll take my business elsewhere. I'll let the others know how poorly this resort handles guests." His eyes widened at that. "We can't have that. Please let me see what I can do." It was a small victory, but it felt good. As he walked away to check availability, I allowed myself a deep breath. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle the family now. I could already feel their eyes on me, watching, expecting me to do what I always did, just let it go. But not this time. I didn't wait for the manager to come back with his solution. Instead, I turned and walked right up to Lara, who was standing with her husband near the pool, chatting as if everything were fine. "Lara," I said, keeping my voice steady but firm, "this whole situation is unacceptable. I don't know what you expected me to do, but I'm not going to just pretend everything's fine." She glanced up at me, her eyes flashing with guilt. "I didn't think it was that big of a deal." "Of course you didn't," I said, sarcasm creeping into my tone. "You never do." Dave and his wife looked up at us, sensing the tension, but neither of them said anything. Lara sighed, her expression defensive now. "Joan, don't make a scene. It's just a room." "It's not just a room, Lara," I snapped. "It's about how you see me, how you've always seen me, like I'm not even part of this family, and I'm tired of it." The words came out sharper than I meant them to, but the more I said, the more I realized I wasn't just talking about the vacation. This had been building up for years, years of being treated like I was the last priority, the one they could just shove aside. And I was done. Lara opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the manager returned. "We found you a room," he said with a slight bow, looking from me to Lara. "We've rearranged some things. It's not the most luxurious, but it's the best we could do." I nodded, not bothering to thank him. I grabbed my bags, then turned back to Lara. "I'll be fine, but just so you know, I'm not going to forget this." I walked away before she could respond. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I knew this wasn't over. It wasn't just about getting a room anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about demanding the respect I deserved. As I checked into the room, small but clean, I felt a small sense of satisfaction. I wasn't sure how the rest of the trip would go, but one thing was certain. Things were different now. I wasn't going to be the doormat anymore. The next morning, the family had already gathered around the breakfast table by the time I emerged from my room. I was still adjusting to the quiet hum of the resort, the kind of tranquility that seemed unnatural after years of city noise. As I walked into the dining area, the usual cheerful chatter stopped for just a beat. I pretended not to notice. Laura cleared her throat. "Joan, I hope you slept okay?" Her voice had that fake sweetness, the one that told me she was trying too hard to make up for the awkwardness. I raised an eyebrow but forced a smile. "I slept fine, thanks." I sat down at the end of the table, away from everyone else. The space felt even more deliberate than it had the day before. Nobody really knew how to act now that I wasn't just going to roll over and pretend nothing had happened. Dave, sitting with his wife and kids, kept his head down, fiddling with his coffee. Amy was next to him, doing her best to look busy with the kids, but I could see the discomfort in her eyes. The morning passed in this tense, strange silence, punctuated only by the clink of silverware and the occasional forced chuckle. I caught Laura glancing at me more than once, but she never said anything. They all seemed to be waiting for me to break the ice, to act like I always had. Quiet, invisible, willing to let things slide. But not today. Later, when I went out to the lake to get some air, I wasn't surprised to find Amy trailing behind me. She was always the quieter one, the one who avoided confrontation. She sat down next to me, her posture stiff, as if she didn't quite know how to begin. "Joan, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," she said, her voice low, almost as if she were afraid of what I might say in return. I turned to face her. "You don't need to apologize, Amy," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "I'm the one who should be saying sorry, for always letting things slide. I should have spoken up years ago." Amy shifted uncomfortably. "But you're right. You shouldn't have had to fight for a room. That wasn't fair." I let out a small laugh, the sound surprising me. "It's not about the room anymore. It's about everything that came before." Amy nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and something else. Genuine regret. "I know, it's just, well, we all kind of assumed you'd just go along with whatever. It's how it's always been." I could feel my chest tighten with frustration, but I held it in. "It's not how it's always going to be, though. I'm not going to sit quietly and take whatever you throw at me anymore, Amy. You don't have to worry about me. You just need to think about how you treat people, that's all." She nodded again, her gaze falling to her hands. "I don't know what to say." "Just don't do it again," I replied. "That's enough." There was a long silence between us, neither of us sure what to do next. Then I stood up, brushing off my shorts. "I'm going to take a walk. Do you want to join me?" I asked, trying to soften the moment. Amy hesitated, but then she shook her head. "I think I'll stay here for a bit." I gave her a small smile before walking away. I needed time to think, time to process the conversation. But the shift, however small, was significant. It was clear that I wasn't the only one who was changing. Amy wasn't as comfortable with the way things had been either. For the first time in ages, I felt like something had cracked open, just a little. Maybe, just maybe, things would be different. That night at dinner, things felt oddly normal again. No one mentioned the room situation, and nobody tried to smooth over the awkwardness. It was like they were all waiting for me to either explode or accept their shallow apologies, and when neither happened, they just carried on. For once, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. But then, in the middle of dessert, when the kids were running around and the grown-ups were talking about their plans for the next day, I felt something stir within me. I didn't want to leave it at just this moment. I didn't want to walk away from this feeling of standing my ground and being seen. I had to take it a step further. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady but loud enough to get everyone's attention. "I've been thinking, and I've made a decision about this trip." They all turned to look at me, some of them looking nervous, others confused. I could see Laura's lips tighten, already bracing herself for another confrontation. "I'm going to take a day for myself tomorrow," I continued. "I'm going to go on a solo hike. I need some time to reset." Lara opened her mouth to object, but I raised my hand to stop her. I'm not asking for permission, I'm just letting you know. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then, as if the air had been let out of the room, the conversation shifted. Dave shrugged, and Amy gave me a small nod. Even Lara, though she clearly wasn't happy about it, didn't say anything more. I didn't care. This was my trip now. I wasn't there to please anyone. I wasn't there to be the passive sister, the one who always bent to their will. I was there for myself, and if they didn't like it, then that was their problem, not mine. The morning of my solo hike came faster than I expected. I woke up early, before anyone else, the air outside still cool with the remnants of night. The sky was clear, a perfect day for some alone time, some space to think without the constant hum of my family's chatter. I'd packed a small backpack the night before, water, a snack, and my phone for safety. I wasn't planning on going too far. I just needed some time to myself, to clear my head. I could feel a weight lifting off my shoulders with every step I took down the trail. No one was calling my name, no one was asking me to do this or that. I didn't have to pretend to be part of something I wasn't anymore. This was my moment, my space. As I walked, I thought back to how I'd let myself be overlooked for so long. Years of trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine, of shrinking myself down so my family wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I'd spent so many holidays feeling like the afterthought, the one who didn't quite belong. But this vacation, this trip, this time, felt different. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to rock the boat. I didn't care if they thought I was being dramatic. I didn't care if they felt awkward around me. I was done being invisible. After a couple of hours, I found a spot overlooking a small stream, a perfect place to sit and breathe. I plopped down on a rock, taking in the peaceful surroundings. The quiet was comforting, and I let my mind wander, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. I didn't have to think about them, about my family's judgments, about whether I was doing things right. I could just be. As I sat there, the sun warming my face, a thought kept creeping into my mind. Why should I have to apologize for existing? That question kept repeating itself over and over. It wasn't the first time I'd wondered it, but today it felt different. Today, I had answers. I glanced at my phone. No messages. The family hadn't even bothered to check in. I didn't mind, though. This was my time, not theirs. But just as I was about to pull out my water bottle, I heard voices in the distance. I froze, listening intently. The voices were getting closer, familiar voices. Lara, Amy, Dave, all of them. I stood up quickly, looking around. They weren't supposed to be out here. This was my space, my moment. I thought about leaving, about heading back before they found me, but I didn't want to run away. This was my stand, my boundary. I waited, heart pounding, as they came into view. The sight of them was unexpected but not unwelcome. For the first time, they weren't just invading my space, they were here for me. "Joan?" Lara called out, a slight hesitation in her voice. "Are you okay?" I took a breath and walked towards them, standing tall, trying not to let the annoyance in my chest show. "I'm fine, Lara. I needed some time alone." "I get that," Amy said softly, her voice carrying a tone of sincerity I hadn't heard from her in years. "We just wanted to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," I repeated, my voice steady. "I just needed a break from the drama." Lara stepped forward, her eyes flickering with guilt. "Joan, we've been talking, and we know we've treated you badly, and I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try." Dave, who had been standing behind Lara, shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, we've been thinking. We don't really treat you the way we should." I looked at each of them, unsure how to respond. It wasn't just the room situation anymore. It was everything that had built up over the years. The distance, the subtle slights, the quiet, unspoken judgments. "What do you want me to say?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "We're sorry," Amy said, her voice almost a whisper. "We know it's been hard, and we want to do better. We don't want you to feel like you're not a part of the family anymore." For a moment, I was speechless. I wasn't sure how to process their words. Part of me wanted to let them off the hook, to forgive them like I always did. But another part of me, the part that had been silent for so long, was telling me I needed to stand firm. "You don't have to apologize," I said slowly. "But you need to show me that things are going to be different. You don't get to treat me like an afterthought anymore." They all nodded, as if that was the final answer they needed. I still wasn't sure if they truly understood the depth of what had happened, but I wasn't going to force them to. They had to figure it out for themselves. "We're going to make it right," Lara said, her voice softer now. "We promise." I didn't know if they would follow through. I didn't know if this was the beginning of some magical transformation or just another moment that would fade into nothingness. But for now, it was enough. "I'm going to finish my hike," I said, turning to face the trail once more. "But thank you for coming out here. I needed to hear that." Without another word, I picked up my backpack and started walking, feeling a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in a long time. The awkwardness between us wasn't gone, not yet, but there was a shift, a crack in the walls that had kept us distant for so long. And maybe, just maybe, this time they would listen. The hike back was much quieter, and I noticed the difference in the air between me and the rest of my family. It wasn't the heavy, uncomfortable silence from before. No, this time it was lighter, almost as if we were all waiting for something to shift. Something had already changed between us, though, and I could feel it deep inside. Whether it was the honesty of their words or just the simple act of me standing my ground, I wasn't sure, but I felt it. By the time I made it back to the resort, I saw Lara, Amy, and Dave sitting together near the pool, watching the kids run around. They looked up when they saw me, and I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, like they were waiting for me to say something, anything. I paused, my heart still full of all the mixed emotions from our earlier conversation, before deciding to approach them. I sat down, keeping a little distance, but no longer as far away as before. My actions spoke louder than my words, and they knew it. "I know you don't always get it," I started, looking straight at Lara. "But I think we're getting there. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. What happened with the room, all of it. But we can move forward from here. I don't need any more apologies, just action." Lara nodded slowly, her face more serious than I'd seen it in years. "You're right. We did mess up, and I want to show you we can do better." "Actions," I repeated softly. "That's all I need. Talk is cheap, Lara. I've heard it all before. Just show me you mean it." Amy chimed in, her voice almost shy. "We will, Joan. I don't know if I can fix the years, but I'll try to do better from now on. I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I'll try to be there more." I gave her a faint smile. "That's all I'm asking for, Amy." Dave, who'd been quiet throughout most of this, shifted in his seat and looked up at me. "I'm sorry for not stepping up earlier, Joan. It wasn't right, how we treated you. I'm going to make more of an effort, too. You're family, and you should have always been treated like it." His words, surprisingly genuine, hit me harder than I thought they would. It wasn't a magic fix, but hearing them say it, really say it, felt like a huge weight had been lifted. "Thank you," I said, my voice softer now. "But remember, respect isn't a one-time thing. You earn it every day. And you'll have to prove it to me, just like I'm proving to myself that I'm worth it." There was a long pause, the kind where no one knew what to say next. Then Lara stood up, walked over to where I was sitting, and did something unexpected, something I hadn't seen from her in years. She wrapped her arms around me in a hug, her embrace tentative at first, but then stronger. "I'll show you," she whispered. "I promise." I let myself soften into it just for a moment, because for the first time in my life I felt like there was hope. Not in some magical family reconciliation, but in the honesty, the rawness of what had just been shared. For once, the walls weren't built up between us. For once, there was a chance for real change. The kids came running over then, pulling us out of the moment with their laughter and energy. They hadn't noticed the tension, and maybe that was for the best. It was the kind of innocent joy that made you realize how much the small moments mattered. I watched them for a few seconds, a smile tugging at my lips, before turning back to my family. "Let's get this day started then," I said, my voice finally sounding light. "If we're going to make this trip worth it, we might as well enjoy it." The rest of the day passed without incident. We didn't try to pretend everything was perfect, but it felt like there was a shift in the air. We all went hiking together, exploring the resort grounds, and even sat down for a dinner that didn't feel forced or uncomfortable. For the first time in forever, we were just together. There was no pretense, no expectation that anyone had to be something they weren't. That night, as I sat on the porch of my room, overlooking the lake, I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't realized I needed. The air smelled fresh, the sounds of the night filling the silence around me. The day had been imperfect, but it was real. We were real. And for once, I wasn't the one hiding, trying to fit in. I wasn't waiting for permission to take up space. I had taken control of my own story. The next morning, when it was time to pack up and head back home, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I'd gotten what I needed, respect, and that was enough. I didn't have to prove anything to them anymore. I had already proven it to myself. As I said my goodbyes and loaded up the car, I turned to Laura, Amy, and Dave. "I'll see you all soon," I said, my voice calm but full of the quiet strength I'd carried with me through this whole ordeal. They nodded, a mix of guilt and hope in their eyes. "Take care of yourself, Joan," Laura said, the sincerity in her voice clear. "We'll be better, I promise." And just like that, I knew they meant it. It wasn't the perfect ending. Life rarely works that way. But for the first time, I knew that I was in control of my own happiness, and that was more than enough. Before I drove off, I took a long look at the resort, the place that had sparked this change. It was more than just the setting. It was the catalyst that made me see everything with fresh eyes. And as I pulled away from the parking lot, I knew that this trip, the family, the whole messy, complicated thing, it would never be the same again. And neither would I.